Holy City Center Radio. It is episode 59. We've got a great one today. My guest is Jenny Gaddy. She is the owner and operator of Atlyss Food Company. It is a weekly meal delivery service. They provide sustainable gourmet meals to the Charleston area. They also have a food truck. We're going to get into it, so you'll get all those details directly from her. I've been lucky enough to have some of their foods, and they are delicious. And they work with a lot of local folks as well, farmers, purveyors, and other businesses. So if you're looking to support local, this is the kind of company that does it, because not only are they based locally, they're getting almost everything from locals as well. So I think you're going to enjoy the story behind the business, and then you're going to probably be wanting to go ahead and order some of those foods for yourself. I'll let Jenny do the work of selling you, though. She'll do a much better job than I just did, so be sure to stay tuned for that interview. Before we get into that, let's just recap some of the things that have been going on. We unfortunately had to postpone. We'll have the guest eventually, but we had to postpone an interview we had scheduled recently because of course, Hurricane Ian decided to mess it up. I hope you all fared well. It seems like the Charleston area wasn't too bad for most folks. I know some people were without power for hours and hours in certain parts of town, and I'm sure that was no fun, but I think by and large we got out of it with not too many problems, so I'm thankful for that. I hope you guys got through okay. Your homes are okay, and family and friends and everything's fine. We dodged another big one because I'm sure you've seen what it did to Florida. And so, it was a little worrisome, even though I knew, and the forecasts were saying it was going to be a category 1 at worst. But it's still, you see what it does, and the devastation it caused. So we were lucky, and I'm thankful for that, as I'm sure you are, as well. So we had to postpone, unfortunately, but that's what's going to happen in hurricane season sometimes, and we'll get the guests back and get everything going again. Before we go into this week's guest, I just want to cover a couple stories that have been going on in town and around the state as well. Some of the bigger ones. The first one was this really bizarre incident that happened back on Wednesday, October 5th. It's bizarre. It I'm sure was very scary for anybody involved, and it makes you wonder what the thought process was behind this, and is there more to it? So what I'm referencing is back on Wednesday, police throughout the state responded to multiple calls of active shooters at schools. Thankfully, every single one of those calls, and I think at the last tally, it was 18 schools in the state that were affected, but all of them were determined to be hoaxes. Officials believe that the hoax actually stemmed from a TikTok challenge. Now, I don't know if that's, I haven't independently looked into this stuff, and I know things have been blamed on TikTok challenges in the past, and it turned out there really wasn't any challenge. There was some story, I think it's been a couple years ago now, where there was supposedly a list of pranks that kids were going to pull in schools, and they were warning all the teachers, and it turned out that no one was actually... It wasn't really a TikTok challenge. It was like someone posted it on TikTok saying, look at what kids are doing, and no one was doing it. So I don't know exactly if that's what happened here. Let's hope that's all it was, and it wasn't something more devious that we'll learn more about later. And let's also hope whoever made these calls to police will be punished, because this is a very scary situation. Not only is it scary for the people involved and potentially traumatic, because active shooters... Those situations, so many emergency vehicles show up, tons of police, ambulance, fire trucks. Schools were put on lockdown. They were evacuating some schools using like the protocols they would use if there was actually an active shooter. That had to have been so stressful and scary for parents and the kids and school employees, teachers, administrators, et cetera. And if any of you were involved, I'm sorry you all had to go through that, but thankful everyone is safe. But just a bizarre story once you kind of step back from that and realize, okay, it was a hoax. But apparently someone or someones were just calling random police departments throughout the state and reporting these active shooters. They show up, nothing is there. 18 schools that we know about. Just so weird. And in the Charleston area, only 2 schools were part of it, and they are on the same property. Burke High School, located downtown. And then on that property, they also have the Simmons Pinckney Middle School. So they both were on lockdown for a little while. No injuries were reported, no suspects located. Police believe it was part of this hoax. So we'll see if there's any more developments in that story. Hopefully an arrest or two on whoever was making these calls. But yeah, just a weird, scary incident that happened. And it was so weird seeing it in real time playing out with all these alerts of police responding to an active shooter at this school, but believe it might be a hoax. And yeah, I'm just very thankful that it wasn't worse, because in addition to, as I mentioned, being scary and traumatic no matter what, this could have went south very, very quickly at one of these schools. If police showed up, if someone looked suspicious, if a kid was holding something that might have resembled a weapon, I mean, we could be talking about some pretty bad tragedies here. So thankful nothing like that occurred. So yes, we'll move on from that. There was a funny story. Let's kind of switch gears here. We're going to talk about a couple political things, but the first is Joe Cunningham. He's running for governor of South Carolina. He's the Democratic nominee. He held a press conference on Thursday, October 6th, where he called out Governor Henry McMaster for declining to participate in any debates besides the one that's already scheduled. The one that is already scheduled will take place on October 26th and will be on SEE TV. But Cunningham, wanted debates. He got that one, but he was saying that the governor refuses to do any other debates. And the one he did agree to, the one I just mentioned, is after people have already started voting, between absentee voting and things like that, and early voting. He said people have already started voting. Why would you, a debate might sway some people's votes, but what if somebody already voted? So he was trying to get some more, and he ran off a list of debates that Governor McMaster has turned down, all of which would have taken place before voting could have started. So, whatever. This you expect these kind of press conferences. Cunningham also talked about his plans for increased transparency and visibility. If he were governor, he'd hold weekly press conferences and do this, that, and the other. But the reason that the press conference is making me chuckle, he brought a live chicken to the press conference, held the chicken during the entire press conference. By the way, if you're wondering, the chicken was very well behaved and quiet and didn't try to get away. It apparently liked being snuggled up on Joe Cunningham. And really, who wouldn't be, right? But all jokes aside, the reason he had the chicken was because, of course, he called Henry McMaster chicken for not wanting to debate more, for not wanting to defend some of his comments and legislations that he supports, namely abortion bans and things of that nature. But adding a little twist to it, apparently this chicken, which came from somewhere in Mount Pleasant, I don't know whose farm it was, the chicken's name was Henrietta. And so Cunningham decided to call it Little Henrietta McMaster. So Henry McMaster has a chicken sort of named after him, thanks to Joe Cunningham. I just had to share that. Just South Carolina politics, you just never know what's going to happen. And speaking of that, unfortunately, on a not fun or funny note at all, you may have caught wind or seen this current, battle between Nancy Mace and Dr. Annie Andrews for SC District 1. They'll take little shots at each other here and there, typical politics, but things seem to escalate recently. Towards the end of September, Nancy Mace, who's our current representative for that district, put out a commercial online that was, misleading in parts. It used a study that was done at MUSC involving transgender care for children. And basically this study included a line that said, in this clinic that they were studying and why people came in and what they were looking for, what sort of treatments and what the end results were, they put the age range on that. And the youngest person to arrive at their clinic was 4 years old. Now, that just means that a 4-year-old, obviously with their parents or parent or guardian or whatever, went into this clinic and they discussed or asked about something relating to transgender affirming therapy maybe, or just questions in general. We don't know. The study doesn't say what that 4-year-old came in for. That's it. That's all it said. It was just someone who came into the clinic. It could have been as easy as, hey, my kid is 4. he keeps saying that he wants to be a girl or he wants to wear dresses. It could be something like that. And they're like, is this normal behavior or is this something we should, keep an eye on? Like maybe this is a sign for, who knows, but it was nothing drastic. And that should be it. That should be simple. But of course, a website got a hold of this study and put it up on their website and did that whole like, I'm just asking questions thing. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong happening here. And I believe that anybody should do what they want. But should a facility like MUSC be having transgender care for a 4-year-old? Completely ignoring the fact that he has no idea what was in this study, what happened in the study. That kind of shtick, you know what I'm talking about. We've seen people do that. I'm just asking questions. Nancy Mace saw it, got a hold of it, or someone on her campaign, and they put out a commercial on the internet mostly. I haven't seen it on TV or anything. But I'll read one of the tweets said, Annie Andrews supports, quote, gender-affirming therapy and surgery on young kids. That's child abuse. And then underneath was like the actual commercial itself. It's short. Shows Dr. Andrews holding, looks like maybe a sticker on a card that says protect trans kids. And it makes the claims that Dr. Andrews supports sex change surgery in children, puberty blockers, gender changing hormones, all for children. And then says that's not protection, that's child abuse. So that's how it all started. And for those who haven't been paying attention to these stories, around the country, several children's hospitals have received threats, including in Boston. A children's hospital had a bomb threat. Turned out the person who called it in didn't actually have a bomb or anything. But nonetheless, threats are coming into doctors and clinics because of situations like this, where some organization, some pseudo news site, or this TikTok account that, they've spread to other platforms called Libs of TikTok. They tend to put out these like misleading claims, falsities, and without directly saying to do it, they know what they're doing, but they don't say the words. They're directing all their followers to get worked up over this and call the hospitals and, just basically disrupt their services. And they're based on lies or at best misleading information. So predictably, this had a similar result. And in addition to, taking the threats and things like that, just having people calling and asking questions or threatening, or even if they're just saying, hey, is this really what's happening there? I don't approve of it. I think this is wrong for your hospital to do. You're disrupting the services of a hospital, specifically children's hospitals. You're taking people away or distracting from care for children, and it's really gross, and people shouldn't do that. Here in the Charleston version of the story, after really not saying too much for a little bit, Dr. Andrews finally released a statement. And I'm not going to read the whole thing. It's on the website. You can find it. I think the whole statement is great. I just, I'm not going to read it verbatim here to you, but I think there's some good points in here. So she called the attack bigoted. She called it a bigoted attack ad about Dr. Andrews and her hospital's treatment of the LGBTQ children that may come into the facility. And some of the lines I want to read here. She starts out talking about the actual care itself. She says, quote, I do not support gender-affirming surgery for anyone under 18, nor does MUSC perform those procedures. What I support is evidence-based medical care with parental consent for teens struggling with gender identity issues. While I do not practice this type of medicine, I have had the heartbreaking experience on multiple occasions of treating transgender teenagers who have attempted suicide because of this ridicule, harassment, and ostracization by peers and adults they should be able to trust. Adults like Nancy Mace, who use our kids as punching bags and pawns in their cynical political games, should be ashamed. Her vicious and disgusting attacks against me and the LGBTQ kids puts them at increased risk of targeted attacks and self-harm behaviors. End quote for that section. And I think that's really important. It touches on what I mentioned about what's been going on around the country. And even if threats don't come in, just Nancy Mace making these attacks is somewhat bullying. if not outright bullying. Imagine being a trans kid and seeing your representative going on TV, calling out a doctor, making up lies about them. But basically the gist of the accusations are that any kind of treatment that is done on someone under 18 who is trans is somehow wrong. And then if you're someone that age, how are you not going to think, oh, does that mean I'm wrong? Am I, you know what I mean? Like the politician is up there, and then who knows what else they're hearing after a politician makes these attack ads, what they may hear from friends or friends' family members or whatever that regurgitate these things, and they say, oh, I can't believe MUSC. I saw it on my Twitter account. People were saying, I can't believe that MUSC mutilates children, which is not at all what is happening, of course. First of all, MUSC doesn't perform gender-affirming surgery on anyone under 18, period, end of sentence. But even if they did, that's not mutilating children. And they wouldn't just willy-nilly be like someone walks in the clinic with absolutely no treatment prior and do this type of surgery. Gender-affirming care does not mean, if you support gender-affirming care, it does not mean you support every type of care, healthcare regimen, whatever it may be, for each individual patient. Just like any other disease or medical issue, anything involving your body, even if it's not like a disease or something wrong, if it's just something that you need help with or you just want, whatever it is, the treatment plan is not the same for everyone. Your age matters. Your gender sometimes matters. Your health, obviously, not including whatever you're going to see the doctor about. You may have something else going on that could affect that treatment plan. You may have allergies. Like, no one has the exact same care. So by saying you support gender affirming care, it doesn't mean you think everyone should have the exact same experience. It is not this, lazy, oh, you say that you're trans, cool, let's do this surgery right now. Let's do this, let's do that. It involves a team of people. It involves a lot of times having a therapist or a psychologist and making sure that, whatever kind of care they want or maybe working towards is appropriate for them and they can handle it. And these poor folks, they already have a higher rate of suicide. And it's the reasons for that are the ridicule and the bullying and things like that they see. And this just adds to it. And, it's not, it's frustrating. I've had to have a couple of people on my Twitter and Facebook making these ridiculous claims about what is and isn't happening at children's hospitals and what this kind of care means. And they just can't. It's one of those situations that we're seeing a lot lately where people are using their bigotry, their transphobia, their homophobia, their racism, whatever it may be. People use that. They find some kind of excuse to kind of explain away the isms, the racism, the phobias. They don't really believe most of the stuff they're saying. They just are using that to justify, in this case, their transphobia. So we all know that. And Nancy Mace is clearly playing that game because, unfortunately, trans people have become the big boogeyman over the last couple years. You probably all remember the big uproar over trans kids participating in sports with the gender that they are versus the gender they were assigned at birth. You remember how that was the worst thing that could happen, and schools were trying to ban it and all this other stuff. For whatever reason, they decided demonizing trans people in general, and now trans children is the route to go. Scare up the base, get people all worked up thinking that whoever's running on the Democratic Party is tricking kids into changing their gender, forcing them to do it, and then, doing these barbaric medical experiments on them, which none of this is true, of course. But there's a segment of the population, as we've learned over the last 5-6 years or so, will believe anything, especially if it's about the side that they hate. So it's all disgusting and gross. And, I wasn't planning on going on such a long tangent because I didn't even finish the rest of Dr. Andrews' statement. So we've already covered what it could potentially do to LGBT kids, the danger she's putting them in. But it goes on. because I did mention it's going on around the country, and these have real life consequences when you make these statements and demonize people and make false and misleading claims. So Dr. Andrews went on to say, quote, while I refuse to back down to these abhorrent attacks and her shameful election strategy, I've been forced to take necessary precautions to protect me and my family. Effective immediately, I am taking unpaid leave from my job as a pediatrician at the Children's Hospital in order to protect myself and my colleagues. Additionally, I am working with my hospital and local law enforcement to obtain increased security through the end of the election. And finally, I'm exploring my legal options in response to Congresswoman Mace's allegations of child abuse. To her, this is one big game, but this is my profession, my life's work, and I will not allow her to defame me just to score a political point, end quote. Although no specific details were given there, it's pretty clear that Dr. Andrews is alluding to the fact that she has received some kind of threat or blowback. Something has happened where she did not feel comfortable continuing to work for the time being at the Children's Hospital. As a candidate, I'm sure she's just like any candidate, just like I'm sure Representative Mace has. You get horrible attacks online. You get people saying inappropriate things about you all the time. But to take it to this level, this makes me, it really heavily seems to imply there's some kind of threat or threats that have been made against her. But then she also says to protect myself and my colleagues. So that makes me wonder if there's been specific threats against MUSC or the Children's Hospital at MUSC in general, not just directed at her specifically as the candidate. Because, as I mentioned, Nancy Mace's ad, although it was trying to attack Dr. Andrews, they did so by talking about this misleading study that was done and not giving the full context of what that meant. So not only did it go after Dr. Andrews, by extension, it went after where she works and the other people who work there. Putting aside the fact that Dr. Andrews doesn't even work in this type of care in the hospital. So it's just a bunch of lies, misleading information. It's the outrage of the day, like I mentioned, the new boogeyman that everyone's using to try to sway people to vote Republican. We've seen other Republicans do this. Herschel Walker in Georgia is doing something similar. He's made some pretty gross comments about trans people, and on and on and on and on. But again, it's more than just lying and misleading. Politicians do this stuff, but it's what she's lying and misleading about that's really gross. It's children, and it's putting these children at risk for either direct harm from people in the community or from hearing things and leading them down a path of thinking they're less than, which a lot of them already feel because of the ridicule they're already getting for who they are. Now imagine an adult politician making you feel that way on top of whoever else is in your daily life. It's really, my political leanings are very clear. I think if you pay any attention whatsoever to this podcast and some of the posts I make, but I'm by no means anti every Republican candidate, and I have voted for Republicans on down ballot races. I'm not like one of those people who's like, "What's the letter next to their name? Oh, R? Nope, not voting for them." I'm not one of those. We have to win at all costs, so I'm going to ignore this horrible candidate who has these horrible allegations against them. I'm not one of those types of people, but I'm very much liberal and progressive in most of my beliefs. And so that I tend to vote Democrat. So there's no illusions here. I wasn't going to vote for Nancy Mace. I didn't vote for her when she ran against Cunningham. I wasn't going to vote for her now. This isn't the straw that broke the back. But for me, I honestly believe, as much as I didn't agree with most of Nancy Mace's politics, even I was a little shocked and disappointed that she stooped to this level. And they're digging in their heels on this. Her campaign is. They're not backing down from it. This is the worst of politics. And I just don't know how anybody could really support her or her campaign after this, but obviously people are eating up this whole transphobia thing. So again, no illusions that I was going to vote for her anyway, but this just, what little respect I had, for her as a politician, is gone. This is unacceptable, and she is unfit to lead, as far as I'm concerned. After this, it's one thing to disagree on philosophical things about how government should run and little things like this. I don't think this is something that's a political disagreement. This is a human disagreement. Like, you as a person, I do not like because of this thing you just did. It's really gross. So, again, sorry, I didn't think I'd ramble this much, but it's something that really upset me. And when you combine it with this has been going on in the country, and it's one thing to do this. It's gross and horrible anyway, but you do it after you've already seen several other states having to deal with these threats against children's hospitals, and it's a direct result of this type of rhetoric, and you do it anyway. Gross, disgusting. I really, really hope Dr. Andrews pulls it out and wins, because this alone is disqualifying as far as I'm concerned. So let me get off my high horse and off the soapbox, whichever one you prefer. And let's dive into a really great interview. Hopefully things will calm down here between hurricanes and political attacks and chickens named after the governor. It's hopefully we'll have some just fun stuff to talk about in the future. But I will promise you this: it's nothing but fun stuff from this point on. It's time for the interview with Jenny Gaddy, owner and operator of Atlyss Food Company. I had a really great chat with her. You're about to become very, very hungry. I will say that. But hey, that beats getting all fired up like maybe I just got some of you. So without further ado, here it is now, my chat with Jenny Gaddy. And joining me now, as promised, is Jenny Gaddy. She is the owner and operator of Atlyss Food Company, a weekly meal delivery service here in the Charleston area. She's going to give us all the details on it in just a little bit. But first, I just wanted to say, Jenny, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
No problem. So before we dive into the business and everything, all the good things you're doing with Atlyss, the first thing is let my listeners know a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you came from, anything you think is important or interesting.
I'm originally from Washington. I moved here about 5 years ago. I've been in the food and bev industry since I was 15. But after I got out of school, or I got out of college, which I went to for graphic design and marketing, I was working for a food and wine magazine in the area, and I was creating people's stories, all of these restaurants' stories, and there was this part of me that felt like I was missing out. And so I started traveling and working remotely, and in exchange for staying with people, I would cook for them. And I did that on and off for about 2 years. And then I moved to Hawaii, started a baking business there, which I funded by starting a cleaning business. And went to New York, worked in some restaurants there, and still wanted to see the world. So I got on yachts, cooked on yachts for about 2 years, and then moved here to Charleston. Was at Zero George, and then I moved over to Mason. And while I was at Mason, I was nannying, and that's when I started Atlyss.
Wow, you've got quite the background in as far as you've traveled to all sorts of places. Cooking on yachts had to be quite the experience, I'm sure. So you've also had several different roles in food and bev over years and years. So you've definitely have the experience, and certainly makes sense why you would launch a company like this. So I guess, where did the idea for Atlyss come from? You're working these jobs, you're working at pretty high-end restaurants here in Charleston, and how did you kind of get to the point where you were like, hey, I want to launch this company, or I have this idea? How did that come to be?
So my intention with Atlyss was I wanted it to be more than just a food service. I think my journey with food, it always felt like something, no matter where I was, it was lacking. Like, for me, it wasn't full circle. Coming from Washington and the way that I grew up, my mom, she made all of our food, and we had a garden, and she preserved everything, and we composted. and I was always a part of it, and my hands were always in the dirt. And so when I was in these restaurants, it was really challenging for me to see all of the waste, not only the food waste, but the packaging waste. And while, like I said, when I was at Mace, I was nannying, and I was introduced to this new world of, busy parents that needed help, and also understanding that it's not just busy parents, it's busy professionals or people that don't like to cook. So understanding this need. And I've always been someone that is extremely passionate and driven. And I realized if I kept running into the issue that I wasn't feeling fulfilled in these spaces, that I needed to create it myself.
Very cool. And then that's exactly what you did. You created this business. It's a weekly meal delivery service. But yeah, you did touch on this a little bit. It also is sustainable. The meals that you create, you say are sustainable gourmet meals. So you've got that focus in it as well. And I guess at this point, if you could talk a little bit about what exactly, how you were able to provide sustainable meals and why that was so important to you.
Well, kind of like I said, when I was younger, my passion for the earth started by my parents composting, and understanding how important soil is. And so over the years, it just, I guess, flourished within me. It's like seeing packaging and being curious about if there was alternatives out there. So when I was conceptualizing Atlyss, I started doing research, because at first it was like I was looking into packaging that would be brought back and washed, and then we would reuse it. But that thinking of growing, that just didn't seem sustainable, or it just wasn't going to work. And so I just started researching compostable food packaging. And then to take it one step further, I started researching local composting companies, and I found who we partner with, compostnow.org, because it was important to me to think, if we are using this composting or compostable packaging, that it's actually truly getting composted and not still just going into a trash can. So that's kind of, I guess, the journey with the packaging aspect. And Atlyss started as well because here in Charleston, we have this year-round growing season. And for me, I love going out and getting to meet the farmers and getting to see the produce that is created in nutrient-dense soil versus something that you see in a grocery store. That's, what inspires the chef inside of me. And so it's the compostable packaging, it's the sourcing from local farms, as well as all of our delivery bags that we use are reusable, and all of our ice packs are also reusable. So again, it being a service that's here locally, that packaging waste that, from other weekly meal services that would be, that is produced, is taken out.
Very cool. And you mentioned packaging. I don't think you specifically said that. And actually, we haven't talked about the meals yet. So you provide all sorts of meals. Whether it's like a lunch or a dinner, and all sorts of different sizes and availabilities. Whether it's like a large family order or something for an individual. There's desserts and there's also juices. And if I remember correctly, the juices, they come. Obviously they're coming in a bottle, and you have the option of anybody who orders, juices in their weekly order, they can return the old bottles to you and you reuse them, correct?
Yes. So our packaging is either the compostable packaging for the food meals, or we do the juice bottle or glass. And if somebody returns it, we have a refill option. So we're trying to incentivize people to reuse the glass or to give it back. And if they do give it back, we give them a discount on their next juice.
Oh, nice. Makes it even better. Helping the environment, and you get a little bit of a discount. You can't beat that, right? Now, you mentioned a couple times now working with local purveyors and farmers and things like that. I mean, obviously that must be important to you and for your, the mission of your business. And as you mentioned, just when you're getting ingredients and products from local farmers like that directly, or purveyors or what have you, it does a lot of times it just tastes better. A lot of times it looks better than what you can find in a grocery store. Are you working with the same, for the most part, the same folks? And I'm sure that might depend on seasonally, what ingredients you use, but are you pretty much always using the same local folks, or is it kind of spread out?
Yeah. So the farmers that we work with one-on-one here in Charleston, we're always looking to expand or reach out and see if there's anyone new. But like Fire Ant Farms, Kindlewood, Chucktown Acres, Wishbone Heritage Farm, those are people that we work with pretty consistently. And then for the other local produce, we try to get that through Grow Food, just because, again, from a business standpoint, to manage all of those sourcing methods is quite difficult on a weekly basis.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I'm sure it's one of those things where you as often as you can, you try to go directly to a local farmer or purveyor, but sometimes, you might have to go a different route. Restaurants have to do that around here too sometimes, but it's great that, well, of course you're a local business, but you are a local business supporting other local businesses. So it's a great opportunity for anyone who's listening to support local in many aspects. And, for those who are listening, they're probably wondering, okay, this all sounds great, but what are the food options? So if you could just kind of give, and I know you have a ton of different options, but just in general, what are some of the things people can see when they go on your website to pick what they want for delivery?
So we usually have between 3 to 4 different dinner meal options every week. And though each one of those, we do our best to have a vegan or a vegetarian option, as well as a meat protein option. And on each one of those, there's single portions or family size portions. Some ideas of what sorts of meals you could see it ranges from lasagna, which is sometimes with gluten-free pasta or regular pasta, or even just a strictly vegetable-based lasagna. We make the ricotta ourselves. We do Indian butter chicken, is one of all of our customers' favorites. Lettuce wraps, lots of stir-fried dishes, mustard chicken. We do a lot of dishes where instead of rice, we do cauliflower rice, but we season it really nicely, and there's lots of fresh herbs in there, lots of Mediterranean-inspired dishes, lots of Asian dishes, just a really wide assortment. And we try to make it as healthy as possible, because that's another passion of mine.
Yeah, you're right. You do have a wide assortment. I mean, there really is just about anything you can think of. And, of course, stuff is added and switched out. And, it's not one of those things where you feel like you're ordering the same thing over and over again, and there's not a lot of options. It always seems like you have a lot available. And, most of this stuff, some is ready to eat right away. You have, whether it be muffins or little snacks and treats, some stuff's good to go. Other stuff, you just have to heat it up. There's really no work that you have to put into these. everything you order, you provide the instructions for how to, how to cook it, to eat it up, or heat it up, sorry, before you do eat it up. And you make it very simple, for anybody, someone like myself who would never be confused with someone who is a cook. You get your food delivered and it tells you, hey, take this out first, do this, do that. You keep it pretty simple. It's not unlike some of the more popular, bigger brands you hear about, the nationwide brands where they provide you with the portions you need and you cook it. But this, of course, is local, fresher ingredients. But same idea where if you don't have time, this is a great option for sure. To be able to save yourself some time when you get home from work or whatever it may be. And a couple other things. You also have a couple local products that you can buy sometimes, like you have Heritage Eggs on your site. I see that you have Dahlia Sophia kombucha, which is delicious for anybody listening and hasn't had that either. So you have some other things that people can grab as well, from other local purveyors.
Yeah, we have Wishbone Heritage Farms. We sell some of their sausage and their eggs. Dahlia Sophia, Harvest to High Chair, Little Bites, Mabel Maze. And DIY Thai that just changed to Simply Thai, which is another local meal kit company. Again, when I was starting Atlyss, something that was extremely important to me was to truly do my best and now our best to support the local economy to the best of our ability and to provide options and other local options from food artisans to our customers in an easy way. So we're already delivering, our meals. Why not offer other delicious items that we don't specialize in as well? So that was of the thought process behind that.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. You're already providing food from local, again, farmers, purveyors, whatever it may be. Just makes sense if there's ready-to-go products, whether they're drinks or individual ingredients. Yeah, it makes perfect sense to offer those as well. So putting those things that are already done, made by other companies aside, when you're putting together, options for the menu, who's creating the menu? You have a background, so I'm assuming you're involved, if not completely, probably heavily, with the types of things you're going to offer. Who's creating these meals and recipes that you're sending to people?
Totally. So in the beginning, it was me, and as of January, I think, is when Brad came on. So Brad Schaefer, who I worked with at Zero George, is now our culinary director. And he is just a mastermind when it comes to creating food and knowing how to make something that's so simple, yet like the most beautiful and elegant thing you've ever tasted. So that was my experience with when I worked with him in the kitchen at Zero, and just trusting his level of dedication to quality. It took me a very long time to feel comfortable taking a step back from that role, especially because it was what I, being the one that founded it and,
right.
Spent over creating all of the menus, and having my name and being so close with all of the customers and them being used to it. It took a very long time for me to trust someone else to take over that role.
Oh, makes sense. The company is basically your baby. I get that. I have a hard time turning stuff over with the website and everything, and trusting someone with something that I built. I totally get it, and I'm sure a lot of people listening understand that as well. That it's tough, when you create something to trust somebody else with it. But it sounds like you finally got there, and you have someone not only that you trust, but is making really good food.
Yeah, it took a long time because I was. To get Brad on board, because I tried talking to him about it about a year prior to him coming on, seeing if he would just come and join the team. And he, I mean, there was COVID, and then he was helping start. He was at, gosh, where was he? He was at Longboard, and he was just at these different places, and finally, I don't know if it was just because I bugged him enough or what, but he decided to make the move, and I'm very happy. I mean, Atlyss we wouldn't be where we are today without him.
So for everyone listening now, they're hearing about these delicious food options, this talented folks behind the business, yourself and the folks you've brought on to help. They're probably just salivating and wondering, how do I get this food, and how does this delivery process work? So, how exactly does a delivery process for the company work? What are deadlines? What do people need to know if they're listening and ready to order?
Yeah, so we put out a new menu every Saturday. So every single week, the menu is different, which is a really wonderful thing. You just go onto the website, and you have until Tuesday at midnight to order for that Sunday following Tuesday delivery. You can also choose, if delivery, you don't want to, think about the time window, or put out a cooler or have that hassle. You can choose to come and pick up at our kitchen, which is in North Charleston.
Nice. And as far as delivery is concerned, is there a certain radius that you cover, or is it certain towns? What do people need to know who may not be in the peninsula or proper?
Yeah, we cover most of the Charleston area. So Sullivan's Island, IOP, Mount Pleasant, Daniel Island, downtown, North Charleston, West Ashley, James Island, Johns Island.
Yeah, nice. So pretty much the Charleston area, the area when you think of Charleston, pretty much that entire area. You guys cover it all.
Yeah.
And if they are listening and want to order, what's the website? I'm assuming that's the best place to go to get information on what's on the menu this week.
Totally. It's Atlyss. So we have Atlyss is a unique spelling. It's ATLYSS foodco.com.
We'll put that in the show notes too, if you didn't catch it, so you guys can just click over real quick and get those orders in. And you mentioned it is a unique spelling of Atlyss. Where did the name come from? What was the thought process behind that?
Yeah, so when I was trying to figure out a name, I was thinking of my own heritage and my own background, and how and why food is important to me. And it's because of my mom, and her mom was also a big part of my childhood, and going to the Oregon coast and going and catching fresh crab and cooking it, and just really fond memories. And her name is Atlyss, and my first niece's name is Alice, and it's spelled ALYSS.
Oh,
so,
okay.
I just kind of was thinking that everybody has their own food Atlyss every single day, and it's the thing that guides us essentially. For the most part, we're always thinking of how are we going to fuel ourselves. It's the thing that most people will stop and take a moment and take a breath and connect, maybe just to themselves, or connect and have a meal with other people that they love and care about. So Atlyss was the thought, and then just combining someone that's important, or people that are important in my life, with the spelling.
Well, that's great. Yeah, it's a good name anyway, but having it spelled that way as a nod to your family is really cool. It was a good story. I didn't know, you see the name sometimes and you never know how people are going to respond. I don't know, it's just something random I made up. So that was great to hear, how important the name is and how it came to be. I think that was really cool. I didn't say this yet, but to the listeners, Jenny was nice enough to provide me some samples. And as nice as that was, she was very mean and said I could not touch these vegan Snickers until we were on the air recording. So these delicious looking vegan Snickers have been sitting in my fridge since yesterday when I picked them up, and I've been dying to try them. So we're going to try one now finally. But before I do, can you tell folks, what's in the vegan Snickers, anything you want to talk about in reference to what looks like a very delicious treat?
Yeah, well, as I was telling you earlier, you can kind of think of it as a protein bar, essentially, or just a sweet treat without any of the guilt, essentially, because there's no sugar. The only thing that is in them to sweeten them is dates. So there's dates and cashews and peanuts, coconut or shredded unsweetened coconut, coconut oil, and dark vegan chocolate is the coating.
I stopped listening because I started eating. I'm sure whatever you said was brilliant and amazing. No, I was listening, but no, these are really, really good. These are extremely tasty. And even though, sorry, I'm like talking with my mouth full now. Even though Snickers is in the name, like you were saying, it's not like a true candy bar, of course. It's much healthier. And but it still has some really tasty ingredients that you were running off, like the peanut butter and, coconut and the dates to sweeten it. It is very tasty, but yeah, you're right. It is. I mean, you could easily tell someone this is candy and they would believe you. But it is more, once you know the ingredients and the background of it, like you said, it's just kind of like some of those energy bars that you see in stores. Probably these are probably healthier than those, even though those are supposed to be healthy, but very, very tasty. I definitely recommend them. I think there was, 4 like little tiny, I shouldn't say tiny. I mean, they're pretty good size, but they're not like as long as a regular Snickers bar, but like little, few bites, and they're very, very tasty. So I'm going to continue eating these, and now I don't have to stop because I'm finally on the air and I don't have to listen to your instructions anymore. No. I'm teasing, obviously. Jenny was very nice, and I was like, yeah, you're right. It would be fun to do this on the air, but they look really tasty. You're also nice enough to provide me with a family meal, which unfortunately I wasn't able to try yesterday. I was hoping to, but will be my dinner tonight, so I'm looking forward to that. It was, I don't know the official name on the site, but it looked like it was like a roasted pork tenderloin, if I remember correctly, and then there's some vegetables and stuff that came with it, and it all looks fresh and super delicious, and I can't wait to give that a try, too. So thank you very much for providing those to me and then letting me tease you on the air about it.
Yeah, no, don't let me stop you eating the Snickers. But I can't, I'm not gonna lie, I can't have them or more than a certain amount of containers. I won't say how many I get for myself each week, but one of our director of operations, Taylor, she's like, Jenny, why don't you just get like 3 or 4 containers and freeze them a week? And I was like, well, no, because if there was 4 containers, I would eat all 4 probably before the week is over.
This is like rule number 1. You're not supposed to get high on your own supply, and that's exactly what you're doing here.
I'm breaking the rules. What can I say?
You are, but despite breaking the rules, it seems like the business has been going well. Anytime I see someone talking about it, or if I mention it, or what have you, if they've heard of the business, they all have nothing but good things to say. So it seems like you've already gotten some, a pretty good customer base that's loyal, and hopefully that'll keep going, and some people listening will give it a shot. In addition to the weekly food orders, I mean, I know that's kind of the basis of the company, the weekly meal delivery, but you also do have a food truck that you do bring out sometimes for, more of a grab and go type experience for folks as well. Is there like a somewhat consistent schedule with that, or is that just you randomly have events here and there? And if that's the case, where can people, find out where the truck's going to be?
We had somewhat of a consistent schedule down at the MUSC Greenway. That's shifted a little bit. We're still there. We'll be there at the end of this month and all of next month. But other than that, it's mostly just pop-up events. If there's festivals or anything like that going on, we also rent it out for weddings and an event or parties, whatever people want to have us show up as. Yeah.
Very cool.
And you can find all of that information. We post it on our Instagram.
Oh, okay, great. Is it just at Atlyss Food Co. or?
Yeah.
All right, cool.
Atlyss.
I'll be sure to add that in the show notes too for folks, so they can go give you guys a follow. And, hearing about food is one thing, but seeing it is also, quite pleasant. So you'll definitely want to see the pictures and things of some of the meal options. You can see that on the website as well. I'm so distracted by the food. And like you said, I'm trying not to open it again during this interview. So I may have missed something super important. So if I did, is there anything that you that I didn't ask you about or we didn't get to cover that you think is important about the business or you think people need to know? Anything at all that you think is, like I said, maybe I missed?
I guess what I would love for people to take away to know about Atlyss is kind of revisit what I said in the beginning was I started Atlyss because I wanted to create something that was more than just a food service. All of our customers, the community here, the environment itself is what it is. It's truly a mission more so than just trying to create, good food and have it be an easy service for people. The mission is the most important thing to me. So.
That's great. Yeah. Thank you for saying that. It's one thing to have a cool business idea and one that people can buy into. When I heard about what you were doing, I thought it was, great. But hearing your story, learning a little bit more about you and the mission behind it, I think it just brings it a clearer picture of the business and makes me want to, support it even more. I think hearing the story is always important, and I think people will have enjoyed listening to everything you had to say. And I appreciate you sharing not just your personal background and beliefs and mission, but also talking about the company. And like I said, everyone who's listening, we'll put all the links in the show notes so you can go check it out for yourself. But Jenny, thank you so much for talking to me today. It was great getting to know you a little bit yesterday too. And yeah, I think this was awesome. Thank you so much for stopping by.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Christian.
And that is it on episode 59. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you to Lindsay Marie Collins of LMC Sound System and F&B Radio Podcast here in Charleston. Also, thank you to Tyler Boone, who you hear his amazing music in every single episode. I think we have 3 songs that we usually play. He's got a bunch out there. Go check them out on Spotify. And thank you to all you for listening. Thank you to everyone who supports the show and the website. You can go to patreon.com/holycitysinner to sign up to be a Patreon supporter, which helps out, as well as going to holycitycenter.com/shop, where you can pick up some merchandise. Obviously, that helps as well. Sharing, liking, retweeting, letting people know that you enjoy this podcast or the website or my Twitter or Instagram, whatever, all that stuff helps out as well. So if you think someone would enjoy the content that we put out on the show and on the website and everything, let them know. And I really appreciate everyone who does that. An extra special thank you to little Henrietta McMaster, the chicken that Joe Cunningham had today. You provided me a much-needed laugh when I needed one after some of the news around here. So big thank you to that chicken as well. We love chicken, right? That'll do it. Thank you so much. We'll have another episode coming out in a few days, another great interview. So, be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. And if you're on a platform that doesn't allow that, just make sure you circle back because we're going to have another awesome interview here in a few days for you to listen to. And with that, until the next time I see you all, good night. Good luck.